Hello, welcome and Happy New Year everyone. Wishing you all the best for 2024. In this video, I will be diving into one of the most horrifying drug trials that went wrong and how it affected the drug industry and future trials of new medications. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and leave any suggestions on the comment section below. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your support. So let's get started.
They thought they were coming here to take part in relatively routine medical testing of a new drug.
Doctors here have been dealing with an extremely complicated set of circumstances, ones they simply haven't come across before.
They are suffering from major organ failure.
On Monday, March 13th, 2006, the United Kingdom was shook by the disastrous news broadcasted on all TV stations showcasing a drug trial that went horribly wrong. TGN-1412, a novel monoclonal antibody drug developed by Janeiro, a German biotech company, was intended for the treatment of autoimmune diseases and leukemia. A study at Northwick Park Hospital in England resulted in all 6 of the volunteers given the drug becoming critically ill, with multiple organ failure, high fever, and a systemic inflammatory response. The group of 8 volunteers had initially been split into 2 groups of 4 who were put in separate rooms. 1 person in each room was given a placebo. The remaining 6 were given TGN-1412. TGN-1412 was administered to the 6 men by intravenous infusion over the course of 3 to 6 minutes. Each patient received the experimental drug in quick succession. Within 60 minutes, the first participants suffered severe headaches, muscle pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, severe fever, restlessness, rash and rigors. After 4 hours, the volunteers developed hypertension, tachycardia, and onset of respiratory failure. By the following day, all of the recipients had been admitted to the ICU at Northwick Park. Their symptoms progressed to multi-organ failure. After further investigations on volunteers, doctors realized that they are facing a cytokine storm. The immune system is expected to recognize foreign invaders, respond proportionally to the pathogen burden, and then return to homeostasis. This response requires a balance between sufficient cytokine production to eliminate the pathogen and avoidance of a hyperinflammatory response in which an overabundance of cytokines causes clinically significant collateral damage. A cytokine storm, also called hypercytokemia, is a pathological reaction in humans and other animals in which the innate immune system causes an uncontrolled and excessive release of pro-inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines. It is believed that cytokine storms were responsible for the disproportionate number of healthy young adult deaths during the 1918 influenza pandemic, which killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide. The first reference to the term cytokine storm in the published medical literature appears to be by James Ferrara in 1993 during a discussion of graft versus host disease. The term next appeared in a discussion of pancreatitis in 2002, and in 2003 it was first used in reference to a reaction to an infection. During the COVID-19 pandemic, some doctors have attributed many deaths to cytokine storms. Rob vividly remembers the events of 2006. I went into the trial partly for the money and also to do something for the good of people. I thought it could have been a massive breakthrough in medical science. I don't really remember the risks being spoken about. We were given a 10-page information document, which we didn't really have time to read. Everything was played down a lot. I had no idea it altered the immune system. David Oakley, patient 1 and the first to receive the drug, was newly engaged to fiancée Katrina. He was in the midst of planning their wedding when he signed up. I had lots to look forward to, he recalls. But within minutes of receiving the drug, David contracted a headache, which rapidly got worse. I told the nurse that I was having a major headache, he says. I had severe pain in my lower back. It was way worse than the migraine, David recalls. I was trying my hardest to twist and turn to find a position where I could feel less pain. I couldn't understand. It was horrible. For Rustkan, then a 23-year-old recent graduate, the motivation was even simpler. Medical trials were like a get-rich-quick scheme, he says. A no-brainer. Unaware he had been given the placebo, he believed he was shortly to undergo the same horror. I was assuming that my body was maybe a bit slower and it was going to kick in shortly. It was daunting, extremely scary, he says. Trainee plumber Ryan Wilson, then 21, had to have several fingertips and all his toes amputated after a devastating immune reaction.
Paraxel is a large multinational contract research organisation. They had a site which they leased from Northwick Park Hospital, and they were doing clinical trials independently from the hospital on early phase development of new drugs.
So, what went wrong and the steps which could be taken to prevent a similar disaster in the future? In an interim report of April 5, 2006, they identified the likely cause of the adverse reaction in the TGN-1412 trial and unpredicted biological action of the drug in humans. The unpredictability raised serious concerns. The UK Secretary of State for Health established an expert scientific group to review what could be learned from the TGN-1412 trial and consider future recommendations for Phase 1 trials. It found that preclinical studies performed with TGN-1412 failed to consider what constituted a safe dose for use in humans, which initiated recommendations for improving the safety for Phase 1 trials of higher-risk medicines. These included changes in the calculations of the starting point for drug dosing, early discussion between regulators and sponsors with much more scrutiny applied to novel agents and access to independent, specialist opinion, sequential clinical testing, one person at a time, rather than simultaneous with an appropriate period of monitoring for sudden ill effects, careful consideration of the route and rate of administration. Even with safe regulation and increased transparency, at some point a human will always have to be the first to test a new drug. Inevitably, there will always be risks associated with that stage. It is therefore critical that an appropriate compensatory scheme is in place for when things do go wrong. The Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry provides guidelines on the insurance and compensation for clinical trials. Those who have suffered ill health as a result of their participation may be entitled to compensation. In 2012, the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry published new guidelines for Phase 1 clinical trials, requiring that individuals should have up to 3 years to notify insurers of potential claims, and trial conductors should have joint insurance protection of £5 million. Whilst a significant step, the limitations remain. For example, the insurance cap would be wholly inadequately to cover a single, let alone a group of, catastrophically injured formerly healthy volunteers. So there you have it, the horrifying story of a medical trial that went wrong and its implications on pharmaceutical trials. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and leave a comment down below.